So in this video, we'll be talking about the margin requirements and how CCP works in exchange traded derivatives and in OTC. Right. So we all know. So in a normal exchange traded derivatives, ETD, exchange traded derivatives, for example, we have BSE and NSE for a futures contract. We have a buyer and we have a seller, and the exchange has a CCP which acts as a both seller to the buyer, and it acts as a buyer to the seller in order to mitigate the counterparty credit risk. Right? It uses CCP. The CCP helps in mitigating the counterparty credit risk that may arise in case of a default, which never happens because the exchange charges margins from both the parties, so that there can never be a chance of a counterparty credit risk, right? So the exchange asks each of the parties to put various types of margins. So for basics, we have initial margin. Now the initial margin is calculated by various risk methodologies. The basic thing is that it is used to cover potential future losses, right? And then we have variation margin. So in futures we have something known as a daily settlement, right? Money is changed hands every single day. It is known as a daily settlement. How is this happening? This is happening due to something known as a mark to market. So for example, if both the parties have put x number of margins, and the trade moved to the party buyer for 1 day, so party A is now in $100 profit. So the amount will move from the person who has shorted his account to buyer's account, right? So there is a movement of flows. This is due to daily settlement. This is due to daily cash settlement, right? And the exchange or the central counterparty uses the margin that were provided by both of this in order to do the daily cash settlement. So if there were huge movements, for example, a futures contract moved heavily to a buyer of a contract, and there weren't enough cash with the seller's account, so the exchange would then send a margin call. So margin call is when there are insufficient funds available with your broker's account. Either you add more funds into your broker's account if you want to still be in a contract, or the central counterparty is going to just square off your position. So this is what happens in case of exchange traded derivatives. You have to understand this is very liquid because the exchange helps both the buyer and seller in visibility, in liquidity of contracts. They can choose variety of contracts. It's highly standard. When you move something known as a OTC, now here things can get a little bit tricky. Now OTC obviously means over the counter. Now there is no sort of exchange, because the OTC is spread out all across the globe. Okay. Now again, there could be an exchange, or there could not be an exchange. There could be a CCP, there could not be a CCP. Now let's focus on the CCP part first. Suppose there are two companies, again A and B. They want to get into an OTC forward contract. Now in OTC we call forward, and in exchange we call the same thing as futures. That's the same difference. The fundamentals remains the same. Only in exchange traded derivatives we call this contract as a futures, and in OTC we call this contract a forward contract. Now in order to mitigate the counterparty credit risk, In an OTC contract, we have the both parties bring a CCP into picture, central counterparty. Now again, this central counterparty acts as a buyer to the seller, and it acts as a seller to the buyer after taking the margins. Right, the central counterparty is going to take margin from both sides as we talk about initial margin, variation margin. Now this is not daily settled. Forward contracts are most of the time are not daily settled. You can obviously view the notional, but it is settled on a settlement date, right, as per the contract specifications. It could be because these are very customized contract. They could also take delivery if there is a big oil company, if there is a big plane company, for example, and it wants to hedge its position against a rise in the oil markets. It is going to take a delivery of the oil forward contract in case after 6 months or 1 year of time the price is very high in the cash market, so it's going to take delivery. So you have to understand that part as well. So it is very customized. One more thing you have to understand is that when parties enter into OTC transactions, they have to sign something known as an ISDA agreement, International Swaps for Derivatives Associations. These include, now ISDA also includes something known as a credit support annex. Now ISDA is a contractual obligation that parties need to sign. So ISDA is a contractual legal contract obligation which includes various terms of with regards to the trades, in which currency they are going to trade, what is going to be the collateral. No, I'm sorry. The collateral is specified in your CSA. Now we undertake a CSA. That means the CSA is a support to the annexure which contains information about your collateral. Now you might be asking yourself, what is a collateral? Now, when it comes to so this is how things are moving. This is how things are moving after the Dodd-Frank Act. Thanks to the 2008 crisis, we had two individuals who passed the Dodd-Frank Act, and now the counterparties are moving to a CCP sort of thing, where there are clear trades. But still we have something known as a bilateral trade. Now in bilateral trades, we have two counterparties again who are trading, but this time there is no CCP involved. So you might ask yourself, so obviously there's going to be a huge chance of credit risk. Not really, because again, as I mentioned, counterparties have to enter into an ISDA agreement, and the CSA counterparties need to get to an ISDA agreement, and in the CSA the collateral is specified. So in case of a default, or in case of there is a margin call, how is the collateral is going to be exchanged? What is going to be the collateral? The collateral could be bonds, securities, it could be cash as well. So it moves from parties A's account to parties B's account, and it is taken care of in case of the collateral is put up by both the parties. Party A puts up its own collateral, and party B puts up its own collateral. And again, as I said, it could be bonds, securities, cash, and it is exchanged by both the A or B when the trade falls for each of the parties, right? So this is how it works. Now, even if there is a case of a default, now most of the banks, you have to understand, most of these two counterparties, these are big investment banks, right? These are not small pension funds or hedge funds. These are, most of the time, these are huge investment banks, and obviously there is a bad name if you default in the market because no one else is going to trade with you. So that's also plays a huge role. But as I said, due to Dodd-Frank Act, many counterparties, many the market is into this sort of a scenario. That is it for